What's up, guys? It's Justin again with another video. Today we're going to be doing or starting a new series. So for Christmas this year, I received the Marvel Crisis Protocol starter set for the miniatures game. This is not a game that I'm incredibly interested in, being heavily invested in. I just figured it'd be nice to mix things up, try maybe some new minis, and see where it goes. So my plan is to paint this box, I don't want to say as quickly as possible, but I want to paint it kind of quick and still achieve a decent standard. I want to maintain a pretty good pace on it. So my plan for that is I took everything that is in the box and we've gone ahead and we've broken that down into its components. So we've got some terrain, we've got some figures, more terrain, kind of scatter things through. So I figured the best way to start this would be to start with something simple like terrain, work through the process, and then my idea here is start with figures and stuff that aren't so interesting to me to get them out of the way and to help kind of establish a style, and then reinforce that style as I get to the figures that I want to paint, ending with figures that I think are going to be more fun than some of the other ones. So perfect intro video for me, in my opinion, is going to be a couple street lights and the trash can that are included with the starter set. Now this list isn't 100% that's the way it's going to be, but you know, if we stick to plan, we stick to plan. If we don't, we'll cross things off as we go. So we got 4 street lights, we've got a trash can. I don't want to, like I said, spend an excessive amount of time working on this. I do want it to look kind of nice though. So I'm going to walk you through some of my stuff, what I'm going to be using. These are pretty much all the brushes that I ever use when I paint anything. We've got a size 0. It's not in the greatest shape, but it's, you know, something with a big fat belly on it. Something a little in the middle. This is a 4-0, a size 1, size 2 flat. This is usually like a dry brush or like if I need to stipple like a large area, and then a 10-0. This one doesn't get used a ton. This is kind of like a recessed wash brush. If I want to do like a wash and not cover the entire model, I'll use this. We've got the Army Painter wet palette. And just so you guys can see, it's a little damp, so what I do is I dampen the hydration pad inside, and then I just kind of real quick kind of swipe it by the sink while the water's on, just kind of get a little bit of water on the top, and then we drop our palette paper on there, and there we go. We are good to go. Now that might curl a little bit, just kind of let that settle, do its own thing, and we're ready to move. So well, starting with these pieces, this is going to be a lot of metallic paints, so we're not really going to need the wet palette too much. So for that, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to grab, if I can find it, just a piece of plastic or something I can use as like a little palette. That's not plastic, this is plastic. Grab like this little sheet of styrene, and we will use that for our metallic paints, just so that we have something to put the metallic paints on. It won't contaminate this. It will be okay. As for paints, we're going to be using a mix of Army Painter, Citadel, Vallejo, you know, whatever. I got a little bit of P3 laying around. I will show you what we're using as we use it. I'm just going to grab some washes and some basic colors out real quick that I know I'm definitely going to be using. And then as I use them, I will show them to you. Alright, so to start off with, this is something I want to try out. So we're going to try it on the trash can first. We're going to see how it works, and then if it works the way we want it to, we're just going to apply the exact same effects onto the street lamps and the stoplights. So I saw this in a video or in a post somewhere. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some purple, and I'm gonna probably should grab the other color first. So we've got purple, or violet, blue violet from Vallejo. We've got ash gray from the Army Painter, and then we've got some flow improver. So we're just gonna grab a bunch of that flow improver. We're gonna thin this down a whole bunch. Use a paper towel. We're just gonna kind of dab off some of that excess, and I'm just going to very gently just kind of stipple this thin glaze of this purple all over this trash can. Alright, so went a little heavy to start with, but that's okay. We'll try and level that out. But over here we got a nice thin kind of almost glazed stipple. I think that's kind of closer to what we're looking for here. So now we've done the same thing with the gray. So we're just going to kind of repeat that process. So just kind of stipple around, and I wouldn't go over everything, but I'd try and hit a pretty decent mix of areas we missed as well as areas we've already covered. So, you know, just keep it as random as possible. Now here where it's a little heavier, I might go ahead and just kind of try and cover that as much as I can, but keep it random. Alright, so here's where things are sitting right now. I'm gonna cite this as a failure right off the bat. I think the purple I used is a little too, contains a little too much white. I think I should have used a darker purple to start off with. Maybe something a little bit more red, so a little closer to like a violet or a little more magenta added in. But I'm gonna press on. We're gonna see if we can make this work the way that I want it to work. So we're gonna scoot this back. We're gonna go ahead and jump to our palette. What we're gonna do is we're gonna grab a little bit of Runefang steel or whatever silver you want to use. Maybe something darker would work better. Again, I'm testing this out. I've never done this before, so I don't actually know how this is going to turn out. We're going to get rid of just about everything. We want this to be an incredibly light dry brush. And I'm just going to kind of very carefully come around the edges of like the top here. I'm going to grab this guy here, kind of scrub some of that metallic paint onto some of these raised lips here. Yeah, because we want all that color from underneath to still show. So I think what the purpose of this is those underlying colors kind of act as like that layer of film and grime and dirt and things that have collected you know, over time. And that's one of the reasons I think this purple was not the right choice. But that's okay, we can definitely fix it. It's not a big deal. But yeah, we're just gonna dry brush all the way around this. And the idea isn't to cover a bunch of it, but we do want to catch most of the edges. And we don't want it to look like super neat or intentional or anything like that. So we're going to do some scrubbing down here to get the bottom ring and all that. I also think maybe some more glazes of that gray would have helped. Now the top of this, I'm actually pretty happy with. It's the side that I'm having an issue with. But again, we can pretty easily fix this because the next stage of this is going to be some washes. Alright, so I'm going to let this sit and dry for a few minutes, and then we'll go ahead and throw some washes down. Alright, so for washes, we're going to jump into two of my favorite washes. The first one is going to be Seraphim Sepia. I'm going to also stipple this, and what this is hopefully going to do is kind of blend some of this purple down, turn things gray. The purple side is where I'm having the issue. When you flip it over here to where there's more gray, I think it looks a lot better. So we're just going to stipple this all over. And then we're going to basically do a smaller, lighter version of that with Agrax. I will show both of those just so that everybody can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, all I'm doing is dabbing this around to kind of mask a little bit of that purple. Now you could probably skip this and just do like a pretty light wash the regular way if you wanted to. That would probably look just fine. Just kind of thin the wash down a little bit, like 50-50. And just kind of glaze that on. Stay close to the recesses and stuff with that to you know, again, blend everything together a little bit. So this, I'm going a little heavier. We're going to make this trash can look like it's definitely been, it's seen better days. In the top, I'm not too crazy pressed about how this looks, so we can go a little heavier on the top, because presumably when something's sitting on the top, it's not going to run down or anything crazy like that. It's just going to kind of collect, so it'll probably be a little heavier up here on the top anyway. And we'll be back when it's dry. Alright, so that actually looks so much better. There's still a little bit of purple showing through, and we're going to get rid of that now with the Agrax wash. So this is, we're going to do it the exact same way. We're not going to cover as much area. We're going to focus it the most where there's like a lot of purple showing through, just to kind of, again, mask that up a little bit. But also apply it some other places too. Just be kind of random with it. So immediately my recommendation is going to be use a darker purple than I did. Something that isn't so white, if that makes sense. Like when you look at this next to, like, I guess I'd say like Drucci Violet would be a decent example off the top of my head. Drucci Violet is a darker, deeper, more purpley purple, whereas this was, it's like a purple mixed with like a light blue, which the blue has a lot of that white content, and I think that's kind of what made this not work the way I wanted it to. But I'm trying to make the best of it. I'm actually not too dissatisfied with this. I think this looks pretty good, all things considered. And this is a pretty good way to paint metals and make them look gross and kind of random and beat up, because you're going to do other stuff to kind of blend all this together. So I'm going to finish this up. I'll be right back. Alright, so here's where we're sitting. This looks much grimier and a little bit closer to what I think a trash can should look like. Now we're going to come back, we're going to dry brush one more round. Just like last time, we're just going to kind of focus on hitting those edges, picking those out. And, we don't want to go too heavy with this. So this one we're going to be a little bit lighter than we were last time. And same with the top. And if you're not satisfied with that, you can always just do another quick round of it. Remember, we don't want to go super heavy, but we do want to make sure that it's, you know, kind of visible around the edges. All right. And then we don't even need to pause for this next one. The last real order of business is, you know, just adding some rust effects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a bright orange. So in this case, I'm going to take Troll Slayer Orange. We're going to stick that on the palette. That's actually entirely too much, but that's okay. And then we're going to thin that down quite a lot. You want to make like a kind of a wash, kind of a glaze. And we're just gonna grab a few spots, just kind of drop it around some of these details. So down here at the bottom, around the handle, then some of these details up top. And then just like the other stuff, we can absolutely stipple a little bit on here and there, just to kind of create the impression of rust that might have just collected and like sat. And then once that dries, it won't be such a strong tone. It'll still be orange, but it will blend in a little bit more. It'll look a lot nicer. There we go. And I think I'm content with that. I'll show you once it's dry what it looks like. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring all the other pieces up to this level, and then we can go ahead and do the remaining steps on everything else. Alright, so I've caught these up to the same standard as everything else, or well, as the trash can. I went ahead and I blacked out the screens and the covers on the tops of the street lights. I did not black out the lamps, and that's because I'm going to be painting those with a orange. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a nice kind of orangey brown. So we're going to use Mournfang brown. I don't know if I would actually describe this as an orangey brown, but it's a good color to base coat if you're going to be doing yellow, and to that same effect, it's going to be a good color to use if you're going to base coat orange. So we're just going to go ahead and block all this in all of these little window sections, and let that dry. Okay, so the Mournfang brown was kind of a bust. This is a pot that I use. I was kind of running low, so I put a bunch of airbrush thinner and stuff in. I used it to airbrush, and I started painting. I'm like, why is this going on so thin? Well, that's why. So I went ahead and I grabbed some Talarn sand. The colors here aren't really an issue. You just want something that's got good coverage, that's going to be kind of an intermediary between your yellow and that black. So the sand color, a tan, a brown, something like that. You just want to nurture that color up. Alternatively, you could go from red to orange to yellow. If that's the kind of color you're going for. I was not. So, but we're still going to make use of that later. I also went ahead and painted the yellow lights on the street lights. And I guess while we're here, I can just go ahead and show you real quick how simple it is to just go ahead and base coat the other colors on that stoplight. Now we're going to make 2 little pools of green. And then I'm also going to go ahead and make a little pool of red. And we don't need as much red as I'm grabbing here, but we can use it for a bunch of stuff. And if we end up, I haven't put too many colors on the palette, so I think I might just go ahead and work on the next mini without cleaning my palette. So we're gonna make sure there's no water on the brush. That's a big thing. We're just gonna go ahead and stick that red right here on that street light. And these don't need red, so we're gonna skip that. Now I do think I want to maybe get a little silly here and just do like the tiniest bit of freehand. So let's go ahead, let's grab a nice finer brush, and we're just gonna put the word stop. And if you don't like this, you can always go back and wipe it out with black paint again. And we're just going to underline it to kind of fill some of that dead space a little bit. Now we'll try and make that glow a little bit later once that's dried up a little bit. Go ahead and clean your brush off again. Let's grab your other one. We're going to go ahead and grab some of this green. And this green is going to be on the bottom. And I went with a dark kind of saturated green for this first layer. Because again, it's not so much the color we're using that matters. It's you know, making sure we get good coverage, and then we'll build better colors on top. So there we go. So next, we're going to go ahead and work on these street lights. Give me 1 second. All right. So what I've done is I've grabbed some Euro yellow. Just kind of grab a yellow that you like. I went ahead and popped the yellow on the street lights over the middle light. I also blacked out this. We're going to do something else with that. I don't like what I did with that. So we're going to take this yellow, we are going to just kind of base coat the entirety of these lamps. And as you can see, some of that black is showing through and turning these into like a kind of a little bit of a green, but it's not enough that it's a problem. We'll deal with that later. It's mostly around the edges, and it's mostly just because of the transparency of the yellow. So we're going to go ahead and get all these blocked out, and then we're going to talk about how we're going to use this yellow for the rest of, pretty much the rest of the project. Okay, so we got these base coated, and while they're drying, we're just going to kind of like set these off to the side because we're not worried about these too much right now. So we've got these street lights here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these pools of yellow. I'm just going to grab just the tiniest little bit, and I'm going to grab one of my base colors. I'm just going to mix a little bit into there. And all that's going to do is brighten that color up just a little bit. And like for the red here, we're just going to go ahead and just kind of highlight the middle. Pretty simple. And then we can go ahead, clean off our brush, and we can kind of do the exact same thing over here, except we're going to use green this time, and that's going to brighten up that green a lot. That might actually be a little too much, but that's okay. And we're just going to pop a highlight over the green light. There we go. So, a little happier with that. So now if we want, we can grab more yellow. We can brighten that highlight up a little more. And just kind of dab the center of it. Just to make that like the brightest point. And we can, again, we can repeat that with the red as well. So just a teeny bit more yellow into that red mix, bringing it much closer to orange, and just the tiniest little dab here in the middle. All right, so on to these lights. So I want to kind of make almost like a gradient effect in these lights. So I'm going to take some yellow, and I'm going to take some of this Mornfang brown. I'm going to mix these together, and I just want something a little bit darker. And we're going to start this at the top, and we're going to slowly kind of pull this down into the brighter yellow. And then while that's still wet, I'm just going to clean my brush off real quick. I'm going to grab a little bit of this pure yellow, and we're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to work it up into this Mornfang brown mix. And what that's going to do is make it, it's essentially wet blending, kind of. What it's going to do is make that gradient a little bit stronger and smooth it out. So we can grab just the pure Mornfang brown, we can put this at the top, we can pull that down, and we can grab some of that yellow, pull it up, and we just want to kind of go back and forth until we're happy with the way that looks. Now the idea for me here is I want the brightest yellow at the bottom, because in my head there's a wire running into this, and the light is sitting at the base of this post, not hanging from the top. So I want the darkest part to be at the top, the brightest part to be at the bottom where the light bulb is sitting. So hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and finish this on the rest of these. And then these are pretty much done. I'm pretty content with those. Now if you wanted to, you could take like a red wash, a green wash, a yellow wash, or an orange wash, and kind of, you know, knock those back a little bit. You could also take this brown and yellow mix and just kind of go around the edge, just kind of soften that up a little bit if you wanted to. You don't have to. But yeah, so that's lights. All that's really left is a couple of minor details. You know, painting this little sign here, we're going to use like a, not a white, but like an off-white. I'll show you how we do that. And then just like any freehand you want to add, if you want to dry brush a little bit over top of all this to bring some of the shine back. And then we'll do the base of them all last. So stay tuned. Alright, so what I've done is I've taken some spaceship exterior. This is like a cool, really light gray. It's like, I'd say like 90 to 95% white. The rest of it is black. We've fixed our freehand here. I'm much happier with that. It says don't walk if you can't read that. This one hasn't got anything on it yet. And then I also took that little bit of white and I mixed it into my highest highlights for each of these and just put a dot in the center of each one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take that white, or that off-white, and we are just going to kind of do one of these numbers and just kind of nudge that along and make it a really like faded looking white, and that's perfectly fine right there, just like that. We're gonna grab both of those and do that. And you don't have to cover the whole thing, so like if you want to leave the corners out, that'll look pretty good. And then I'm going to grab some red. We're going to paint the buttons red. We'll kind of wash that down a little bit so it's not so clean. Alright, so the last like major thing that I think that needs to be done is I want to basically do the opposite of this sign that I did with this sign. So this one says don't walk. This one I'm going to do one of those little walking dudes on, or attempt to. So what I'm going to do is just kind of thin this out, get a nice point on my brush. And I'm going to just kind of wing this. So we're going to do, I think we got like a little like this, and then we're going to bring it down like that. And then we're going to do one of these, and then a little dot on the top for the head. And that works for me. So I can go back in. I'm gonna use this this orangey red version of this, and I'm just gonna kind of dot it throughout this just to brighten it up just a little bit. And then I'll be back and we'll do the stone. Alright, so there's our little light pole all done. I went ahead and just traced the outside edge of that with red, did a little arrow, and then kind of scribbled some like warning text on it. You know, press the button, wait for the signal to change, whatever. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and kind of wash this down a little bit. So I'm going to start with, this is ash gray. I'm going to put a decent amount on the palette, just because I've got 4 bases to do. So we're going to make sure we knock them all out at once. Then I'm going to take contrast black Templar. I'm literally just going to grab the tiniest little bit. We're going to darken this ash gray down a little bit, hopefully. Maybe. We might need a little more. It's when you are using straight black for anything, it's best to kind of err on the side of caution because it can very quickly turn into a color you don't want it to turn into. Black is quite powerful, so hence the reason I'm only using the tiniest little bit. So that'll work. So we're going to just kind of do the edge of these bases in this color, and that's incredibly easy. We're just going to go all the way around and basically base coat that edge. Okay, so once that's dried, that's going to look something like that. I left it patchy on purpose. Because we're going to do a couple washes over top of this, and we're going to dry brush it, and we'll pretty much be done after that. So the first wash we're going to use is Agrax. We're also going to throw down a little Seraphim Sepia, and if you want to, some Reikland Flesh Shade is a good choice too. Kind of like an intermediary between these two. It's a little richer. But we're going to wash like we've been washing, so we're just going to kind of, you know, be real loose with it. Just kind of, you know, stipple it on, grab places, don't like wash over an entire area, because once we're basically establishing that that mottled effect. So we're just gonna layer it up, and you can even do 2 or 3 layers of this step, like this exact step, and it will give you more depth in what you're doing. There's certainly advantages to doing that, but you don't have to do either or. You can just do the 1 layer. I'm gonna do probably 1, maybe 2 layers of this, and then a couple layers of the others. But I don't think I'm gonna just do like 2 flat layers of Agrax. I'm gonna do the other layers and then come back to the Agrax at the end, I think. So there's what a layer of Agrax looks like, and I think that looks really cool. The only thing it really needs is that highlight. So I mean, if you just want to do an Agrax layer, just do an Agrax. That's fine. You know, you take it as far as you want to take it. So I'm going to go ahead and apply these washes on all these, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the dry brushing step. All right. So the last thing we're going to do, we're going to take this big flat brush. We're just going to throw some ash gray on it. So the same color we base coated with no black added. We're going to get most of it off, and we're just going to very gently just hit that edge. You don't have to hit the whole thing. If you want to leave like sections undone, if you want to come this, like kind of do it sideways and pick up cracks and stuff. And then you can even work your way up the sides of this a little bit. You can hit the metal some. It will kind of add to that worn effect, but it will also wipe out the metallics. So if you want everything to still have that strong metallic sheen, you might want to come back and just do 1 more round of metallic dry brushing, just so that all your metallics are accounted for. Alright, so while we're wrapping this up, I just want to say, you know, this was a big kind of experiment for me. I think the biggest takeaway here, for me personally, is don't try to teach a thing that I haven't tested myself yet. This was my first attempt. I saw that tutorial using the purple. I looked at the pictures, it made sense to me, and then clearly I was doing it incorrectly. So I want to apologize before we go any further into this. Typically that's not something I would do. I've always been very vocal about, you know, you see in a lot of Facebook groups and stuff like that, people going, oh, well, you know, I see that this is a thing that people do, and I've heard, and, you know, stuff like that about any given technique. And I have always been an advocate for, if you are going to put that out there, unless you're like posting links or something like that and say, oh, I saw this. If you're giving personal experience, make sure it's something that you have practiced yourself before you put it out there. So I went back and I found the tutorial again that I saw this thing on. It wasn't really like a tutorial, it was more like a step-by-step breakdown. It was like a picture. And it was a lot of text, but there was a picture alongside it. And I misread one of the lines, and that's what led to this not working quite as well. So, like I said, I want to apologize for that. But it worked out pretty well. I think the purple adds some interesting tones to the overall thing. It's not so much that like it reads purple, but it's enough that like in a couple spots it breaks up some of the blandness of these colors. Alright, sorry about that. Kind of rambled on a little bit there, but just wanted to end the video here. So there's where we're sitting. I think all these look pretty good. I'm very happy with them. We can go ahead and cross lamps off of the list. And I think the next video will probably be definitely one of these two. So hopefully you're looking forward to that. I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.